If you haven't read The Thing That Stalks the Fields, you can listen to it here and read along here. This analysis video is a companion piece to my rendition of it, and contains spoilers. The Thing That Stalks the Fields is hard to place in a box. For a classic creepypasta, it's uncharacteristically formalist, and while it flirts with the border between romanticism and realism, it never becomes so idealistic that it pulls away from believability, even during its moments of impossibility. It is an isolated incident, written in an anecdotal fashion. There are justifications for its impossibilities. The story begins with a curious set of events, the hay bales at this solitary farm moving towards the boundaries of said farm. The first sentence establishes a question in the reader's minds, an open-ended question with any number of possibilities. The circumstances in which this will be read will inevitably be knowing that it is a creepypasta or horror story, as the context will be read on a creepypasta site or read by a person associated with creepypasta. However, this doesn't spoil any reveals the story holds. From the outset, the hay bales could be moved by a monster, an alien, by punk kids as the narrator suggests, by ghost, by an angry neighbor or a rival farmer. And once the horses are decapitated, the possibilities are only slightly reined in, but remain open enough to let the reader know that this is going to come to an interesting conclusion. We are teased with a question that is difficult, but not unanswerable. The author does have an answer after all, a good answer at that. The vague title of The Thing That Stalks the Fields is eventually described in great visual detail. Its actions, its movements, and its motives become clear after agonizing tension building. The literal, threatening nature of this thing explains how it can exist in the outskirts of humanity, safe from the gaze of human eyes. The time period isn't explicitly stated. All we know is that cars exist and that coffee is prevalent in what I assume is America. But the isolation the narrator finds himself in hints to me that this isn't a contemporary story. I'd assume that this story takes place in a pre-internet age, perhaps before even telephones and TVs were commonplace. Or maybe the narrator just doesn't have either of those. That said, there's nothing that would exclusively bind this story to the genre of creepypasta, except for the fact that it was written in that context and shares many stylistic aspects with it. For all intensive purposes, this is a creepypasta, but it could have easily been written close to a century ago and still fit in as a cutting-edge horror story, on shelves beside American classics like The Grapes of Wrath or Of Mice and Men. The visuals those novels conjure up in one's mind aren't that different from the setting of this story. The Thing doesn't harm the narrator. The Thing is thoughtful and efficient. While it has no regard for the lives of living things that aren't the narrator, the revelation that the narrator is the Thing's pet tells us about its feelings for the narrator. It protects the narrator, guards him, traps him, but only threatens to harm him if he tries to leave. If the narrator misbehaves like a dog shitting on the carpet. Is the Thing scary, deadly, and threatening? Yes. Categorically yes. But these features are in aid of the real conflict and driving force of the story, the creepy circumstances the Thing creates for the narrator. The moving hay bales, killing the horses in an inhuman manner, divining the intentions of an altogether alien creature, being a pet to said creature, being alone with said creature for the rest of one's life, and the creepy nature of the Thing itself. Lovecraft is often mentioned in the same breath as creepypasta, but Lovecraftian horror is its own thing, with many different techniques and themes, different from creepypasta. But what is shared by both subgenres is the fear of the unknown. An unknown that is beyond human understanding. And that, in a small way, is presented here, as the narrator is trying to come to terms with his situation, trying to comprehend the thing that stalks the fields. While he makes headway at interpreting its threats, he can never truly understand its motives. The same way your pet dog can emote and sympathize with you, but never understand why you're looking at that glowing screen so much. The narrator will never know what the thing is doing with its time. The narrator's mind is too small, and the thing's actions are too alien. The story doesn't have much in terms of minute journalistic details, thus it doesn't utilize the Fleming effect. But what it does in its place is have the narrator speak in a very conversational way. This method of writing can do, and does, just as much to couch the story in realism as the Fleming effect would in many other quality creepypastas. Now on the note of the narrator. The narrator's character jumps off the LCD screen. He's masculine. We can assume he's a man. He's practical, a loner. Enjoys the simple things like coffee and relaxing on a rocking chair on a porch. He's a blue-collar southerner that feels he can only express anger until he learns to express fear. While the written words of the story aren't contextualized, as is the case sometimes in creepypasta, we can assume that the thing that stalks the fields is the last entry in a very old-fashioned, worn-out journal. Since we can deduce he doesn't get many visitors and doesn't fear for any family, we can assume that he is indeed in isolation. This journal is the only form of communication that he has, and it's with himself. I find it disappointing that other narrators haven't thought to pull out of this story what it is truly offering, but I've done my best to do justice to this character. This story, this anecdote, ends before the narrator attempts to leave. Isolation is a problem we can convince ourselves doesn't exist. In reality, we are a social species, and loneliness can drive anyone to craziness. The narrator isn't that different from you, from me, from our types. Internet-dwelling introverts. There's more to life than people. There's art, there's science, and the natural world. But people are needed to be healthy. We can only deceive ourselves for so long. Sometimes we become trapped inside with only our internet, our RPG or fictional world. A thing that we need, but that will drive us to insanity if we're not careful. The narrator is also trapped in an increasingly small world, marked by hay bales. He's trapped with a monster, just like us. And only now with a foresight that he will forever be alone. Only after picturing growing old without a friend in the world. But this thing, does he make a move? His move, for all we know, is suicide. His only chance at escaping isolation involves moving past a predator that he is a mere invalid in the hands of. He learned the hard way that isolation is no way to live. His best option is suicide. Fortunately, for you, it's your worst option. If you have something to contribute, please leave a comment. If you want more content like this, consider subscribing.